Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today for today's VMware multi-cloud live stream. Just as a reminder to the audience that these are streaming every week from Tuesday and Thursdays, and we're featuring new speakers and topics at 10 a.m. on Pacific time. These recordings are also hosted on the VMware Cloud YouTube channel to watch on demand, so we encourage you to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of the latest. Today, we are excited to have John and Martijn here again with us today for part 2 of our series on operationalizing your hybrid cloud. So if you weren't able to join us for part 1, which was on Tuesday, you can check that out on our YouTube channel. And with that, we'll have you both just introduce yourselves for those who didn't see that and just provide an overview of what we'll actually be discussing today. So John, Martijn?
Yeah, so my name is John Diaz. I'm a technical marketing manager with the Cloud Management Business Unit. And Martijn, if you want to.
Yeah, I always let him go first so that I can say ditto, and then I cover vRealize Network Insight, all of the networking, troubleshooting, monitoring within the CMU or within VMware.
Perfect.
Yeah, so today this is a continuation of what we did Tuesday, 2 days ago. So again, we're talking about a customer, a fictional customer in this case, which is a composite of many of our customers, is undergoing a migration from on-premises to cloud using VMware Cloud on AWS. And what we're focusing on is how they're using vRealize Cloud Management to assist with that. So in the first phase of the migration, we did some planning. And we got the sizing for our environment down. We understood the implications from a networking perspective, the firewall rules that we needed. We discovered our applications that were running in our private cloud. And then the migration process was ready to go, and we were able to monitor that. What we didn't show was actually monitoring that process. Martijn's going to have some links at the end where you can go and see more information about how we can work with HCX in vRealize Network Insight together to kind of give you a holistic view of that migration process to make sure everything's going okay while you're doing that. So today we're jumping into the point where we've migrated our applications to VMware Cloud on AWS, and now we're going to manage them. Right. And so we're doing everything in an application context. We're going to make sure that our applications are running healthy or better than they were from a performance standpoint on premises. We're going to look and see how our VMC environment is doing, our SDDC is doing in general. Do we have enough capacity? Do we have wasted capacity that we can reclaim to save some money? We're also going to show how we can elevate cost visibility through pricing in vRealize operations to the application owners. And then Martijn is going to wrap up showing us how vRealize Network Insight will give us continual visibility into the health of our hybrid network. So we'll start with the VI admin persona who's going to use vRealize operations. And where I'm starting here is in an application view. These applications that you have that I have displayed here are actually the ones discovered in vRealize Network Insight, as Martijn showed that capability last time. So I have the shopping cart application that was deployed in the environment, and now I can see all of the components of that application, the tiers, the front end, the database server, the load gen server. So I have everything I need to see about that, including the any alerts in context of the application, right? So all the virtual machines, are they healthy? The hosts that they're running on, the vSAN, et cetera, are those healthy as well? So I have contextual information about the environment, but focused on the application itself. Now let's take a look at a couple of the few of the dashboards that we have available to us. Again, we want to do everything the purpose of running all of this is to run applications for our organization. So we want to check on all the applications that are running at MOAD. So we can select one, we can see the topology, we can see the services that are running, how many of each service are running from an inventory perspective. We can look at KPIs for contention for CPU and memory, and then we can drill down to the individual VMs and review their performance as well from this dashboard. And you'll see these dashboards have a lot of information to help you understand what you're looking at. So if you're not sure why memory contention is important, there are guides right here to tell you exactly what what could cause that and what you might need to do about it. Now that we've moved from on-prem to cloud, we may want to make sure that our application is running as well or better than it was running on-prem in the VMC SDDC. So let's use this view. This is the pre-migration stats view, okay? And we're going to set a time range to sometime before that migration took place, okay? And then we're going to set the time range over here for some time after that migration took place. So once I have those set, I'll select my front-end virtual machine in each of the views, and then I can look at the statistics for those, CPU, memory, networking, storage, latency. And so we can see that across the board, we're actually doing, we are doing good, even better than we were. There's a slight improvement in disk latency and fewer packet drops, transmit packet drops in the new environment. So not only are things as good, but they are better than they were before. So you get that assurance or validation. A lot of times when you're working on migrations, you have to deal with very nervous application owners, and this is just a good way to prove to them that everything is running as it should be, and that the migration didn't really create any problems for them. And you can get very granular, so I can go down to individual metrics if I need to and look at those from a before and after perspective as well.
And now, with that, John, are you able to, for example, share this information out pretty easily with an application owner if they were interested in seeing it?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a great question. You can actually any of this information can be exported, right? So you can take it, and there's an icon here. You'll see, and this is just an export icon. You can export that to CSV if you wanted to give them that in that format, so they could pull into maybe their own tools. But better yet, you can just click on this little share button at the top right here, and you can share the dashboard with them. It'll be a read-only copy of the dashboard, but they can interact with it just as I did, and they don't need to have a login to vRealize Operations Cloud. They can just get access to that. So there's many ways to share this information with the app owners, so they could just do that validation themselves, right? So that's a great question. Now, let's look at some of the things that we can look at from, managing our SDDC. We have a VMC inventory dashboard that shows us basically all the details about our SDDC, the cluster, host inventory, virtual machine inventory. We have a performance and utilization dashboard that gives us nice top 25 charts for some of those areas that we may want to be aware of in terms of CPU contention or memory contention for our virtual machines. So it'll show us the top VMs with contention in case we want to take some proactive action to address that. Same thing from the network and storage utilization aspect. We can see what's going on there as well, and any outliers or top VMs with the most problems or issues in those environments. From a capacity standpoint, we can also make sure that our VMC capacity is adequate, that we have enough capacity remaining, and we're not hitting any kind of thresholds with that. So, very detailed information again about each of the hosts, the capacity that we're using on those hosts, our peak times, our average, etc., our data store utilization, even down to our disk group capacity, and more, down to each of the virtual machines themselves and what they're using. So you can identify any, hungry VMs or VMs that are using more than maybe their fair share of the environment, or leading to you having to grow the environment, add more hosts, and maybe you can address that by resizing these virtual machines. So we'll even make recommendations about that.
Are you able to resize or make any adjustments within the platform, or? Okay.
Yeah. Actually, so it's interesting because many customers, VMC customers, what they're worried about is, hey, I know VMware will add another host for me when I start to run out of storage capacity, for example, but I want to be able to control that. I want to be able to understand why my storage is growing, and maybe do something to remediate that before that happens. And so this kind of a view would give you that capability. You can identify a machine that has maybe runaway growth, figure out why. In one case, I had a customer that had a database server that was just, expanding rapidly. And they had a conversation with the DBA, and looked like there was a runaway process that was using a lot of storage. And they were actually able to address that before that resulted in them expanding their SDDC and incurring more billing. So, absolutely valid use case there. Speaking of billing, we do collect the billing from your cloud services portal. That's optional. You don't have to enable this, but I mean, why not? Because this gives you very good historical trending about how what your billing looks like for your SDDCs, and where those expenses are tied to commit, on demand, etc. So you can see a lot of information about that when you purchase hosts, maybe when hosts were added to those environments. And then there are VMs in the SDDC, as you may be aware, that are there by default, and they're the management VMs in your SDDC. These keep things running. So you obviously want to know if they're healthy, and we have a dashboard that focuses on those. So remember, we're talking about application awareness for the consumers of your cloud, but now this is for you, the administrator, to make sure that everything is healthy and working, so you can raise an issue with VMware if something doesn't look right, etc. So you get a lot of detail about the performance and health of those management VMs here as well. Now, another capability is looking at these objects in detail. So let's say I wanted to know more about why my NSX Edge performance was abnormal at a certain time period. You can see a drop here, for example, or a peak here, and you can see that usage rate trend is correlated with the transmit rate and the receive rate. So what exactly happened here? So you can drill into this object and go to get more details about that. You can go to the metrics page, and Martine's going to show you how Network Insight does this as well. But from a vRealize operations perspective, you can get information about your network performance. So we can look at packets per second, packets transmitted per second, and received. And what's nice about this is, by default, we collect every 5 minutes on these metrics. So you you may lose some granularity if you're looking for a blip on the radar, let's say. So what you can do is activate this near real-time data view in vRealize operations, and that'll give you 20-second interval collection, right? Which is the fastest that we can get metrics out of vCenter. So we will have the ability for you to see, really granular data. So here I have my metric for the packets received per second, and as I look at that, I can see the very detailed changes of that over time. Now, finally, I want to talk about the consumption. I want to drill a little bit more into capacity usage and consumption, and you can see that we are not only looking at your trending of where what your consumption has looked like over time, but we're also tracking or projecting where you may be within a year, for example, out to 12 months. So we can show you ahead of time when you may need to add, or when you'll have new capacity added to that. And we look at that from a demand perspective by default for CPU, memory, disk space. So you can see all of those in a single view to be able to not be caught off guard, by any changes in the environment. And so, Lauren, one of the questions you asked was like, well, can I take action here to rectify that? And you absolutely can. So I can identify opportunities to reclaim disk space, CPU, memory, basically from those VMs that aren't being used. I may have VMs that are powered off. We'll identify those, give you the opportunity to actually reclaim those, or idle VMs, snapshots that people take and forget about. They're old snapshots. We want to get rid of them. Excuse me. As well as orphan VMDKs. So all of these are actionable right here from the UI. I can say, delete these powered off VMs, reclaim this disk space. Maybe that'll push off that need to expand my SDDC to add more capacity.
Makes sense. And I think just from that view too, you can see from your projected and also what you're looking at from a capacity standpoint, you can even from that information establish stop and start policies so that you're utilizing and not wasting where you're not needing resources as well. So I could see how that could be a good use case there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, there's a lot of kind of ways you can branch off and use this data in different ways. So yeah, and that's absolutely a valid way to do that. So we saw some billing earlier, right? We collect the bills. Let's look at how do we bubble that billing information up to the people who are actually using it, so that they understand the impact of their applications and how that contributes to kind of the budget or the cost associated with running those. And we do that in vRealize operations through these pricing cards. So pricing cards give us the ability to take those the basic rate, which would be the bill, and then mark those up, if you will, to add additional charges to those, so that we can account for basically everything. Or if you're doing you're doing internal charging or something like that, you may want to, not that IT is necessarily a profit center, but you may want to use this as a method to help maintain and run the environment effectively by targeted pricing of additional services and so forth. So you can even break this down by the different guest OSs and what rates they incur. We can do this based on tagging. So for example, if I'm offering antivirus or backup services or DR in my SDDC, I can tag VMs that are taking advantage of that, and they'll get an additional charge, either a one-time or a recurring charge for that. And then you can see here there's just a general catch-all for VM setup charges, and then monthly recurring charges, or you can change this to yearly, whatever you want here. But this is a kind of a catch-all category for maybe something that wasn't covered in the guest OS or the tagging capability. And then you just assign that policy to a group of applications in your environment, and you're done. And in the next demo, you'll see the third part of this. We'll see how that actually is visible to the consumer in vRealize operations when they deploy and manage their applications. Sorry. So finally, here's a chargeback. Here's the result of that. So this is a dashboard. Again, you can share this with those application owners, or you may use this as justification for budget for IT to say, okay, here's all of our applications. Here's what they cost to run. Here's the price we charge. So therefore, our budget request matches this. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a financial committee for approval to buy more infrastructure, more stuff just to keep the business running, and then be kind of called to the carpet of, well, who's using this stuff? Why do you need this? And me having to justify giving the business what they need, and this does it for you. I really wish I had this capability back in the day. So here we see, and it's broken down, by application as well. So I can see, that MOAD shopping cart application and how the price is broken down. So it's very detailed information about that, even down to the virtual machine and the costs associated with those. So with that, I yield the rest of my time to Martijn. I know I took a lot of time, but hopefully you found this valuable. Martijn, I'll stop sharing and let you go.
Yep, let's see if this still works. Boom, 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 boom. That one. Yep. That one. All right. So now we've covered the monitoring infrastructure, and we're basically looking at the network admin view from vRealize Network Insight, but looking at the same infrastructure because there's these two roles that we have to play, right? And typically, sometimes they're combined, the VI admin and the network admin, but mostly they are separate roles, separate people. So they look at different things. And in this case, we're going to look at the network stuff. So I'm looking at Network Insight here, and I'm actually just going to look for VMC SDDCs. So we're kind of cheap because we did just have one SDDC, but if you have multiple SDDCs in multiple regions, in multiple organizations, maybe even, you would have a list of every single SDDC in VR9. Doesn't matter which organization you add it to. And first off, you all get this same information that you can also correlate against the views in vRealize operations. So you can talk about the same thing. So if you're looking at a specific SDDC, you can call it by its name, but you can also look at the SDDC ID. And then stuff like the vCenter IP addresses and all that stuff. You can also already see that there's a problem here related to BGP, which I'll get to in a little bit. But for now, let's just open up the SDDC dashboard to get a closer look of all of the networking components that are relevant to keep an eye out on in the VMC SDDCs. So the reasoning behind this dashboard is mostly that other people are provisioning all kinds of applications and VMs inside VM Cloud and AWS. It might even be automated using vRealize automation. And again, that's the third part of these sessions for next week. So we need to keep an eye out on everything that has a limit, like bandwidth, like firewall rules, security groups, those kind of things. But I also want to be able to look at the current configuration of the network. So making sure that the security policy is okay, making sure that there's not too much firewall rule changes happening, and if they are happening, show me what they are. But for now, so that new firewall rule changes, so I can actually look at the last 24 hours of those firewall rule changes, and then look at the actual firewall rule that, well, has been modified by someone. If I were to drill down deeper into this firewall rule, I would actually have the identity of the person that actually changed it. So I can even do the blaming game there, which is great. So we have this overview here, but I can also go a lot deeper and look at the migration implementation planner, or security planner, as I like to call it. But this is basically where you can see what talks to what. So in this case, we are looking at a grouping by VLAN, or when it comes to VMC and AWS, it's a logical switch, it's a segment. So you can see what network is talking to what, also what is communicating with the internet, and maybe even some shared physical or regular physical service that might still be on-prem. The cool part about this view is that I've got a bunch of these grouping by options. So I can look on a per application basis what is talking to what. So this also kind of brings me back to the application dependency mapping that we did in the previous session, because this is also looking at the connectivity between these applications. So you have a good view of what's going over it. And you can also see that it's talking to the internet, and also some physical servers and some other virtual servers that are on-prem in this case, because it's not on the VMC and AWS environment. I can zoom in and get a list of all of the services that are hosted within this group, so network services. So that could be like a web server or a database server, those type of things. So every single port number that is open in the network, basically. So total visibility here. The other thing that we can also do is generate some recommended firewall rules based on this application in this case, because I was grouping by application and I pulled up that VMC Imaging hybrid app. So the recommended firewall rules are scoped on that specific application. I could also go in and do it on a per VM basis or on a per network basis if you want to have very high level firewall rules. But typically, customers tend to focus on the app. So we have this list of firewall rules here, which basically is just implement this in order to get a secure environment that is also currently happening, and benchmarked against the current traffic. So it is taking the actual traffic that it's seeing coming via this app, and then turning that into firewall rules. You could either deselect or select firewall rules here if you don't want, for example, it to use internet DNS service. That's maybe not that a good idea, but you can select as willingly, and then you can even export it into CSV files and also in an XML file. And this one is kind of cool because we also have a script that can take that XML output and then import that directly into VMware Cloud and AWS. So it'll take these firewall rules, the ones that you've selected, and then just create them within VMC, and then also add the VMs and things and all the required services into the firewall, the distribute firewall there. Of course, you can by default it'll be disabled rules, so you don't like import it and everything breaks. You can also double check it before you actually enable them. Or if you want to live dangerously, there's also a flag in that script that you can do to enable them right off the bat. But this is typically happens, well, either before the migration or after you've migrated. You don't do it during the migration because you don't want to change too many things. So yeah, that's why this is also focused on the VMC dashboard here. So another cool thing is, for example, the network traffic and events, and where we can list the internet traffic that's going through that environment, that VMC environment. We're specifically focusing here on egress traffic towards the internet, because you also get billed for that, right? So the amount that you're probably going to get billed for, you can predict that using VR9. And again, if you remember the last demo, you also saw that we could do this even before we migrate anything to VMC and AWS. But this is sort of after the fact, so you can just benchmark that against what you predicted before you migrated. And then the events is basically everything that's happening around networking within this VMC SDDC. Oh. And if I now look at some data operations around, I'm having a problem, and one of my applications, that imaging app that I was showing earlier, is giving me some problems. It's either slow or it's not reachable. So what I can do is I can request a path between two VMs, so VMware VM1 to VMware VM2, and then it'll draw out the network topology based on the actual network configuration that is making this network function. So in this case, there's a combination between an on-prem VM using also NSX here, as you can see, and then it's going out to physical networking, and then it's traversing into a VMC Direct Connect. So this is the AWS Direct Connect that then connects into the VMC and AWS SDDC. And we also have the information around the tier 1 and the tier 0s inside VMC. And every single thing, what I'm hovering right here is clickable. So I could get the information, the routing information, are there any errors on it, those type of things. And even if I click the firewall, I could even get the applicable firewall rule count that's applicable for this path. So not everything, it's distilled into what is actually applicable to what you're looking at. In this case, it's a very simple allow any. But I wanted to show this one lastly, because we were also seeing that BGP error before I went into the VMC dashboard, right? And this is where it actually is manifested. So it is attached to, those errors were attached to the VMC Direct Connect. So it also bubbles up till the actual SDDC itself. Meaning that if you're looking at the SDDC and your Direct Connect is having an issue, VR9 will tell you about that on the level of the SDDC. And we've got the entire configuration here. So Direct Connect ID, the virtual interface ID, local remote IP address, even the BGP information. And you can see right here that it's a redundant pair. We've got two, but one of them is down. And it's been down for a long time. So we get alerts based off of these things. So if it goes down, you can get an alert and then go into this type of troubleshooting. And then the next step for me as a network admin would actually be connecting to the remote IP address and actually looking at the device itself. Or I could drill down into the physical networking here and see if there's any overloads with its CPU, or maybe there's an overloaded link, an interface that's just processing too much traffic and we need to reroute some traffic. Those type of things are all visible from this view.
So you can set certain notifications or alerts based on what you want to identify to let you know and alert you. Is that coming through the platform itself, or is that also able to be sent, to your email or anything like that?
It's all of the above.
Okay.
So alerts itself are generated within the system, so you can look at it. I mean, but you have to be in the interface, and you're not constantly in the interface, of course. So there's a way to get ServiceNow tickets, for example. So if ServiceNow is the primary ITSM tool, or if you just want to get an email if something goes wrong, and then tunnel that to a Slack notification, for example. We also have a Slack integration for that. You can get an SNMP trap as well if there's like some other network management system that's doing the alerting. You can do that as well. These alerts even go into vRealize operations, because the integration between vRNI and VROps, they share the alerts between one another. So you could even go into VROps and then see these alerts there.
Got it.
So that was it for me, and also 5 minutes over time, but that's okay. So the next session is all about self-service. So we've planned the migration, we've done the migration. I also got a link to help do that migration a little bit easier. I'll show you that in a minute. But so we've covered managing the infrastructure. So once you have migrated, how do you monitor it based on the visual infrastructure level, but also the networking level? And of course, I mean, these are just 10, 15-minute demos, right? So there's a lot more here. So I would definitely encourage everybody to look also at the links that were in the YouTube, I think, description.
Yeah.
Where we've got links to the HOL, where you can play around with it yourself, or even walk through this demo and learn a lot more. But so the next vRealize session is going to be all about the self-service, and that's also where VROps and vRealize automation integrate with each other, and where you can do self-service automation deploy or application deployment, which is pretty cool. So last thing that I want to show is this link. I'm not sure if that's in the description, but this is where we can integrate vRealize Network Insight along with VMware ACX. So the idea is that you use vRNI for the application discovery. So you find out which applications are running, you find out the network requirements for those applications, if you group them into migration waves and then want to move them over, so you know what to expect on a network performance basis. But then you can use this Fling in order to seamlessly get the application constructs, so the discovered applications from vRNI, and push those into VMware ACX as so-called mobility groups. And then you can do a mobility group migration in ACX itself. So you can migrate per application over there. But this basically just gives you the ability to not copy and paste everything from vRNI into ACX, and just have it done programmatically.
Perfect. And if that link isn't there, we'll make sure to add it. And as you mentioned, these are all different next steps, and links and resources are in the description on the YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, we do encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you can see a notification and know when the next session is coming up. As you said, the third part for this series will take place on next Tuesday, so the 27th. And as we mentioned before, they do run every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. So we hope to see you all there next week. But with that, thank you guys so much for providing this demonstration. Do you have any final closing thoughts you wanted to share?
I think the only part is that like 10 minutes just doesn't do both of vRNI and VROS justice. So if you are either in the process of migrating, or if you are on AWS, VMC and AWS, make sure you check out the other links, because there's a lot more information there on how to actually sufficiently run and operate these environments, because you do need to take into account a lot of things which those products already do for you.
Perfect. Yep. And if you are interested, like you said, there are some hands-on labs that you can test it out yourself. And we also have a link in the YouTube description pointing to a self-service VMware Cloud on AWS offering, which we have available right now. So you can start purchasing and get started online. So we encourage you to check that out as well. Well, with that, thank you all so much. And yeah, we hope to see you next week. And have a great rest of your week, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.